Y'all, if you are wanting to be a guest on podcasts to market your Christian book, I don't want you to miss out on the importance of engaging with podcast hosts before you send your pitch. If you've been listening to the show since the beginning, this comes as no surprise to you. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm your host, Kim Stewart. I'm a book marketing strategist and podcast publicist, and I want to help you build your author platform and market your Christian books by guesting on podcasts. After working with authors the past 7 years and as an avid podcast listener myself, I found that podcast guesting is an incredible way to meet new readers and market your message. There's nothing like pushing play on a podcast and hearing an author share their God-given message and the lessons they learned and how we too can live out our faith in every area of our lives. But before we can be a guest on podcast and share that message, we have to send a pitch email to the host making the ask. And before we can make the ask, I want you to warm up your relationship first so your pitch doesn't seem so cold when it lands in the host inbox. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, y'all. So let's get to it. So why should we engage with podcast hosts before pitching to be their guest? Because we don't want our pitch email asking the host for something to be the first time we ever make contact with them. That just sends the signal that all we care about is selling our book to their audience, right? But you might be thinking, Kim, isn't that the point of podcast guesting, to get in front of someone else's audience and market our books? Well, yeah, it is. Podcast guesting is about getting in front of other people's audiences, but not just to market your book. It's to deliver value and serve the listeners, and that markets your book for you. If you can deliver value and serve well throughout your 30 to 40-minute interview, both your host and your listeners will want to connect with you afterwards, which helps you grow your platform and makes it easy to market your book to them. Ask me how I know. Like I said, I'm an avid podcast listener, y'all, and I love discovering new books this way. So let's get back to that podcast pitch and making the ask. I'm a big believer in the give, ask rule that my friend and author Susan B. Mead taught me a long time ago. Give first and then ask. Y'all, in Luke 6:38, Jesus says, "Give and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." Oh my gosh, y'all, don't we want all these podcast guesting opportunities to be poured right into our laps? It starts with giving first. I see this fruitful time after time with my author clients I work with and with my own podcast guesting that I do. So what does it mean to give to podcast hosts before pitching? In episode 15, I shared 6 ways to build relationships with podcast hosts first, and I'll highlight them for you here. And you can go listen to episode 15 where I go into them in more depth. But they are: number 1, review their podcast. Number 2, share their podcast on social. Number 3, follow them on social and engage on their public post. Number 4, reply to their stories. Number 5, subscribe to their emails and reply and engage. And number 6, if appropriate, invite them to be a guest on your own podcast first. And I know y'all, you're thinking, I have to do all that before I can start pitching? Well, no. Well, I highly recommend at least number 1, review their show. Definitely do that before you get started. But I recap these first 6 ways, but now I want to share with you 6 more ways you can build relationships with podcast hosts, because along the way, you're going to have all these different opportunities that pop up. So you don't have to do all of them at once. You may not even have to do all of them at all before you can start building a relationship. But I wanted to share lots of different ways you can do this. So again, I just shared 6 ways, and now I'm going to share 6 more. Number 7, engage in Facebook communities and be helpful. So I found that some podcast hosts have their own free Facebook groups that you can go in and be helpful and engage with the community there. It's not about pitching. It's about going in and adding value and just being helpful. Or you can join the Smart Christian Podcasters group or the Christian Podcasters Association group. Those are both very active Facebook groups for podcasters, but they also have posts in there about, if you want to be a guest or if you want to have a guest on your show. And it's just a great way to get in there and be aware of other podcasters in your space and be helpful. If they're asking for a guest, don't automatically go, me, and promote yourself. Like maybe make some suggestions of some friends of yours that would be great guests for their show. And do that first. Number 8, join their book launch team and be helpful. Oh gosh, y'all, I've made so many amazing relationships with authors by doing this over the years because I love them. I know I'm going to love their next book. So I want to join their launch team and be helpful. And I used to even manage launch teams too and have worked with the publishers and authors. And it always stood out to us when we would have like a perfect cheerleader on the team, like somebody that was so helpful to help with everybody in the launch team and to help spread the word, help encourage each other, give genuine feedback on, what they were reading in the book. Be helpful and leave an Amazon review. That's a big piece of a launch team, right? And share it with your friends and just be helpful and tag that author who also happens to be a podcast host. Number 9, you can attend online events they're hosting or speaking at and be helpful. Oh gosh, y'all have seen that the summits have just blown up, right? When we had COVID and everything shut down and we couldn't go to in-person events, these online summits that were already amazing have just exploded. And there is so many. I think I had 3 or 4 I signed up for just last week alone. So it's hard to, catch everything, but be intentional. And if you see a podcast host that you're wanting to build a relationship with, make sure and put that on your calendar when they're speaking. Sign up and get a free ticket for it. Share some of the content that they share and tag them and let them know how helpful it is to you. And if there's a Facebook group, pop in there and be helpful because the podcast host may be hosting the event themselves or they may just be speaking, but it's a great way to be helpful and kind of get your name recognized by the podcast host. Number 10, you can highlight the podcast host freebie in your email list. So no, we talked about this a little bit on the last episode about, or 2 episodes ago, about collaborating with other people in your community and help share the message of their book, whether it be other authors or podcast hosts or other friends you have. And so this kind of goes in line with that is, does your podcast host, so one of the things, remember I mentioned, was sign up for their email list and engage with them. And the other thing you can do is if you like the freebie that they're sending to their email list, ask if you can highlight it in your own email list. I do this all the time with my friends. A lot of times I don't even ask first, y'all, but I'll share it in my email list because I want to be generous. And I have found something that I downloaded and helped me, and I want to turn around and help somebody else. So you can highlight their freebie in your email list. But if you want to let them know, reach out to them and say, hey, I just wanted to make sure this was okay with you. I would like to share this with my readers. And again, it's just another way, another touch point that you can be friend of mine for them. Then number 11, share something on your own podcast. Share something you learned from their podcast or maybe even from their book if they're an author, and they probably are in our niche, right? So share something on your own podcast, something that benefited you and you want to turn around and share it as value to your own listeners. That would be such a great way to do it. And then, make up a quote meme to share on social and be sure and tag the host so that they know that you did that. And then number 12, you can share podcasts that they've guested on. So typically you'll come across this in your research as you're researching podcasts that you want to pitch, and you'll get the host name, and then you can go look up where they have been a guest and look at, if it's a podcast you already listened to, be sure and listen to that episode and share it. We all need to be maximizing our content interviews and sharing them and over and over and over. So what better way to do that than to listen to one of those podcasts and share it and tag both of the podcast host. You might get a 2-for-1 deal, right? And be sure to tag them because they're likely to reshare it with their audiences. Okay, y'all. So now you have 12 different ways you can give and support podcast hosts before pitching them. And again, if you're thinking, this takes too much time, Kim, well, it really doesn't. Honestly, there's really no better way to spend your time than building these relationships with podcast hosts. And if you pitch without doing it and receive a no thanks, we're full, we're not accepting cold pitches at this time, well, then you're going to wish you would have taken just a little bit of time to do some of these beforehand. And honestly, it doesn't take much time at all, and it goes a long way in a podcast host's mind. But I will say, do it authentically. Don't just pull up this list and check them all off in one day and think, okay, done, ready to pitch. Don't do it in a stalky way. Spread it out. See what works best for you and feels authentic to you and to the show. Some you'll do proactively, but some you'll just do reactively as opportunities present itself. And if you're thinking, okay, this all sounds great, I'll come back to this episode when my book is published and I'm thinking about marketing it. Whoa, y'all. That is too late. If you wait until then, it's too late. If you're still writing your book or you're waiting on it to publish, you can take action on some of these ideas I'm sharing today. And trust me, your future self will thank you when you're ready to start podcast pitching. It's never too early to start building relationships with others who can help you and your message go farther than you could do it alone. God can work in so many wonderful ways, y'all, through the relationship you build with a host when serving their podcast listeners. And that relationship starts way before you send your pitch. So if you are wanting to start pitching and guesting on podcasts, I want to invite you to sign up for my free video training on 5 steps to jumpstart your podcast pitching. You'll see the link here in your podcast player. That's all for today, y'all. And thank you for tuning in. It means so much to me. And I'll see you here next week to help you market your book one podcast at a time.